Welcome back to Marketing Champions here on Daily Ad Brief. I'm Howard Walpuff, your host. Again, we're talking about marketing with marketing experts from around the country. Today, we're in Sarasota, Florida with Heather Osgood of True Native Media. And Heather, welcome to our conversation today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, we're excited to have you here and learn a lot more about all the things you're doing. But why don't you briefly start us with how you get started in the marketing industry?
Yeah, so I actually started my career in radio ad sales. So I did radio ad sales and then moved into newspaper. So yeah, I'm pretty old school.
Well, it's music to my ears. Radio and newspaper just is the means that people always got their advertising from, but you really have taken a different turn with where you're at now, because this is really newer ways to advertise and get content out there through podcasting. So what brought you in this direction?
Podcast advertising was something I saw a real need for from the beginning, and just listening to podcasts and realizing how few ads there were on the show. So I founded True Native Media podcast advertising representation firm in 2017 to really help podcasters and advertisers make that connection and create podcast ad campaigns that would work well.
And really is a great medium for getting a active listener to absorb the information, because people really do get absorbed into these podcasts. They have whether it's the theme of the podcast or the podcaster themselves, something attracts their attention and they want to really hear the whole thing through. So getting an advertising message within there is a great captive audience with a very similar interest, so you can really target them as well.
Absolutely. One of the really powerful pieces with podcasts is the level of engagement. People don't just stumble upon a podcast. It's a very intentional act. When the listener is there, they're extremely engaged in the content. And when we look at host-read endorsement ads that really, take that host and promote that product in a very specialized way, it gets great results for the advertisers.
Now, finding the podcast really is important as well, because you want podcasts that already have a listenership and that's actually growing. So how are you making these connections together between advertiser and podcast?
One of the most important pieces of podcast advertising is making sure that the show you're advertising on does actually have a sizable audience. Like you mentioned, there are now over 4 million podcasts out there. And you could guess the vast majority of those podcasts have very small audiences. So it's really our recommendation that you look to target over 10,000 downloads per episode if you're doing baked in ads, or over 50,000 impressions per month. So at True Native Media, we really specialize in kind of going out and finding those podcasts and making that connection, because we know the audience size really does make a big difference.
So what kind of success stories have you had from having ads on a podcast and the results that they've received?
So people listen to the podcast because they really love the host. They like the content that's being provided. And you could imagine that when someone you know, like, and trust is recommending a product, you're going to be more apt to go out and make that purchase. We see a lot of success with direct response advertising in the podcast space through the use of promo codes, unique URLs, and really even attribution tracking software. This pixel tracking has really gone very far in creating just that, I would say, evidence that the campaigns have been successful, and conversion rates are really high because that engagement is so high.
And those are key components to seeing the success. Having that kind of information is very powerful. And especially on these types of podcasts, you really are getting a targeted message to a targeted audience and seeing a response.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is about targeting when it comes to podcast advertising. It's important to remember that it doesn't have to be matchy-matchy. True crime, for instance, has a very great female listenership. So if you're looking to reach women between the ages of 18 to 35, true crime can be good. So it doesn't have to just be a female lifestyle show. It's really about looking at the right demographic and making that connection. And we can do that really well in podcasts.
Well, it's so important to have that understanding of where to reach your audience, and it's clear that you have that with everything that you're doing. So we commend you on the success that your agency is having right now, and thank you so much for sharing with us on the segment.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I hope that people will consider podcast advertising.
And thank you all for joining us as well. Podcasts are so powerful. It creates so much great content for those that are producing them, and obviously you get the right type of listenership going on. Great opportunity for advertising, and True Native Media does a great job of really putting the right ads into the right podcasts and hitting the right audiences. So please check out more information about them here on Daily Ad Brief. But go on, have a great rest of today, and I'll see you next time on Marketing Champions.
Simplify presents Addressable CTV, combining the power of TV with the targeting and attribution of digital. Simplify's Addressable CTV delivers massive reach with the ability to scale without sacrificing precision. TV buyers can generate incremental reach with household-level targeting, frequency controls, reporting, and insights. To learn more about Simplify's Addressable CTV and what it can do for your clients, visit simply.fi.